What's good, everybody? It's your boy Will coming at you with another movie log, and in today's video I am going to be doing a roundup of the movies that I've seen in theaters in March and April. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and I'm going to be going in the order that I saw them as opposed to any kind of worst to best ranking, and just ranking them as I go along. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with The Outfit. This is a twisty and taut crime drama starring Mark Rylance, Zoe Deutsch, Johnny Flynn, and Dylan O'Brien. In it, Rylance plays an English tailor, or cutter as he likes to be called, living in 1950s Chicago, and the plot centers around him becoming endangered by his criminal clientele. This is one of those one-room chamber dramas that sort of harkens back to movies like Rope and 12 Angry Men. And I think that it, for the most part, does that tradition justice. I did sour on it a little bit the more I thought about it because of the plot holes in this movie. And they're not the kinds of plot holes that you really have to interrogate this movie to find. I mean, a lot of it does just kind of come down to lazy writing, but I think the reason it didn't bother me that much was because oftentimes this movie doesn't rely on plot twists, but rather Hitchcockian suspense. There was one stretch of the movie in particular that focused on a suitcase. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you've seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. And it was moments like that that actually kept me invested in what was going on. So while this movie is pretty deeply flawed, mostly from a plot perspective, I did enjoy it and could possibly see myself seeing it again. So I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have X, which sees indie horror darling Ty West returning to his bloody roots. I want to preface this by saying that West's directorial debut, The House of the Devil, is, for me personally, one of the most frightening movies that I've ever seen, and The Innkeepers is a very respectable follow-up. So when I heard that he was releasing a new horror movie that was produced by A24 and getting really good reviews and billed as something that was both scary and ecstatic, I was kind of hoping for something that was going to be both really frightening and also feel fresh. And the truth is, it's not very scary. It's just kind of an exercise in good old-fashioned bloody, nasty fun. And it is bloody, nasty fun for the most part. And it does feel fresh, I think, because Ty is a very good director and he directs his movies in a way that's very deft and striking, and just a lot of the shots and images in this movie have stuck with me since I've seen it. So while it doesn't reach the same heights as House of the Devil, I did enjoy it and think that if you're a slasher head, you should definitely check it out. Next up, we have The Batman. So this is the most anticipated comic book movie of the year, I'd say, in a market where comic book movies are king. So I know that the big question on everybody's mind is, what did little old me think of it? And the truth is, I liked it, I think. If there's one word that I had to use to describe this movie, it would be monotonal. There's not a lot of contrast between scenes as far as tone and feel. It just kind of goes from scene to scene. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. A movie doesn't have to have contrast to work. And I don't think that it reflects incompetence on Matt Reeves's part. I think that what he was trying to do was create a whole ass world and aesthetic. I just don't think it works that well for me personally. And watching this movie did remind me about how much I prefer the propulsion of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight movie. So I think the problem with that movie, however, is that the editing is kind of jarring, almost like Christopher Nolan was on a little bit too much Adderall while he was making it. Whereas here it feels like the whole cast and crew is just zooted off of fentanyl all the time. So who knows, maybe in the next iteration of Batman, they're gonna find that perfect sweet spot in the middle. I mean, really, they should just stop making these movies altogether, but who am I kidding? We're just gonna keep getting the same 5 franchises getting revived and rebooted over and over and over again until the world burns up. So I'm gonna give this movie a tentative 3 out of 5 stars. I could easily see my enjoyment going up or down the more I watch it. It is a beautiful movie. I think that the set pieces are good. I think that Pattinson brings a new interpretation to the character. I just prefer the Nolan Batman. Next up is Everything Everywhere All at Once, the latest maximalist, psychedelic, A24 produced tearjerker from the Daniels. This movie is about a Chinese immigrant mother, played by Michelle Yeoh, living in LA, who finds out that she is part of the multiverse and must battle intergalactic beings in order to save her relationship with her family and save the universe. I liked the Daniels' previous movie, Swiss Army Man, because when you look at that movie and you cut away all of the very irreverent dick and fart humor and psychedelic visual style, it had this very earnest message at the heart of it, about wearing your heart on your sleeve and loving yourself, and just the fact that they're willing to let their freak flag fly so much kind of helps them deliver that message. Whenever I talk about their movies, I feel like I'm describing an Idol song.
If someone talk to you the way you do to you, might put their teeth through. Love yourself.
And this movie is very similar in that sense. The main difference being that this one is about family drama and generational trauma, all through a psychedelic, comedic, and sci-fi lens. I think that there are 2 ways that you can always view a movie. One is by asking how a movie uses cinematic techniques to portray the subjective reality of its character or characters, but also how it uses cinematic techniques to portray the worldview of the director and the people creating the movie. And I like this movie because I feel like it's very conscious of both of those things. I mean, on one hand, everything that's happening on screen feels like it's supposed to reflect the subjective reality of Evelyn, Michelle Yeoh's character, but it also feels like a movie that could have only been made by millennials or Zoomers, just people who grew up in a time where you're overstimulated by media, and you can watch Dragon Ball Z and Wong Kar-wai movies in one sitting. There's definitely an underlying sadness to all of that chaos. Now, as far as what I thought of the movie personally, I did really, really like it, but I will say 2 things. One is that, in the process of trying to tell a family drama, but disguising it or dressing it up as a multiverse superhero saga, it does lose my interest a little bit because multiverse superhero sagas aren't really my thing. And then, as much as I really appreciate the Daniels' very earnest and positivist message that cuts through in both of their movies, and definitely appreciate their voice in filmmaking, it's just not the kind of thing I usually see in a lot of my all-time favorite movies. So I did really like it, but I think that those things reflect more my own personal tastes than they do their shortcomings as directors. So I give this 3.5 stars out of 5, and just know that 3.5 stars means I think something is really, really good. I mean, if you're mad at me for not giving this movie 5 stars, I don't really care, but just know that I tend to rate movies low. So yeah. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. I saw this movie with a friend and was considering not mentioning it in the roundup just because it wasn't as aggressively boring or bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's just not really my kind of thing. But the more I thought about it, the more I did want to mention a couple of things. One, I mean, the stakes in this movie just feel impossibly low. I mean, it's really incredible how just non-consequential everything feels, to the point that it's like, guys, just do a TV show. Just make an HBO Max TV series. TV's what's hot right now. Movies are going down. TV's the belle of the ball. So, you know, JK, if you want to actually don't call me. I don't want to work with you. But anyway, this movie just feels like it should have been a TV show, or this whole series feels like it should be a TV show at this point. But then the other thing that really struck me was I Googled who directed it. And it turns out it's a guy named David Yates, who's directed every Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts movie since Harry Potter 5, The Order of the Phoenix. Now, what's kind of interesting to me about that is, does anybody remember how Harry Potter's 5 and 6 had this very like dark aesthetic and visual style? I mean, I don't know how well those movies have actually aged, like, or how well they hold up in a general sense, general quality sense, but I do remember they had this very dark, visually striking aesthetic, and then 7A and 7B kind of start to lose that aesthetic. And if this movie is any indication of what the first Fantastic Beasts movie are, it's just kind of, just looks pretty flat. So anyway, I don't know why that is. Maybe I'm misremembering certain things, but I just think it's funny that David Yates' first two installations in the Harry Potter franchise were two of the most, at least visually striking and visually memorable movies in the series, and then since then has made 5 more that are just some of the most bland IP material out there. Anyway, I give this movie 2 out of 5 stars. And rounding out our list is the epic Viking movie that your parents are pissed they wasted their money on. For people who don't know, The Northman is a movie about Amleth, a man in 10th century Iceland who is on a quest to kill his uncle so that he can avenge his father and save his mother. If it sounds like this movie ripped off Hamlet, just know that it predates Hamlet and probably provided the basis for it. So, yeah, the more you know. Robert Eggers has made a career out of making art house period piece movies that usually have a horror streak. You know, even if they're not outright horror movies. And I enjoyed his directorial debut, The Witch. I didn't love it or find it to be as effective or creepy as a lot of other people said they did, but I definitely liked it and appreciated it for what it was trying to do. As far as his follow-up, The Lighthouse goes, I love that movie. I think it's so incredible and sublime, and it's probably my favorite movie of 2019. So that raises the question, how does this movie stack up in his filmography? And I gotta say, I loved it. I loved this movie. I loved the cinematography, the direction, the production design, the sound design. It just makes for such an incredibly transcendent and enjoyable experience. I've seen interviews with Eggers where he talks about when he's designing a set, he's trying to be as historically accurate as possible, looking at the architecture, to the kinds of wooden planks used, to the kinds of nails that they use in those wooden planks. And that really cuts through here. I mean, I really did feel like I was watching these 10th century Icelandic villagers through a window pane. And given the level of technical historical detail that he puts into his movies, he really does not have to go as hard behind the camera as he does, but he does. The direction in this movie is incredible. It's just very deliberate and restrained, and kind of has this sinister and voyeuristic quality to it that a lot of people talked about with The Witch that I really felt here. I loved the cinematography, especially in any scene involving some kind of nighttime ritual around a fire. Like, as an example, the chanting, kind of going berserk ritual that the Vikings do before their village raid, or the kind of weird, like, pagan mating ritual that the Icelandic villagers do. I just think that the shadows and textures in those scenes are mesmerizing, and overall I just really liked the look of this movie. So if you're looking for something really actiony and fun, this probably isn't what you're looking for. I mean, it does fall pretty squarely into the art house category, and it's really just a movie about what it was like to live back then, not just when the buildings and clothes looked alien, but the values and customs were completely alien to us, and just completely alien to our modern sensibilities as people. And it's supposed to anchor you in that world, both with the historical and technical accuracy, but also this kind of exploration of myths and mythological images. There's one scene in particular around the beginning that is pretty brutal, but also necessary in terms of showing what the world was like back then. So yeah, I loved it, and it's tragic that Robert Eggers is probably never going to be given $100 million to make a movie like this again, given its performance at the box office. But if you're into this kind of thing and it's still playing at a theater near you, I would say catch it while you still can. I give The Northman 4.5 stars out of 5. It's my favorite movie that I've seen this year so far. And yeah, that's my list. So this is good. I'm getting in a pretty good rhythm with these videos as far as banging out the notes for the movies, filming it, editing it. So my tentative goal now is to do a monthly roundup every month. So we'll see how that goes. It's not a super ambitious goal, but seems like a good place to start, given that I started this channel by talking about my favorite movies of 2021 in April and May of 2022. So I apologize in advance, or well, really thank you guys in advance for your patience in that sense. So follow me on Twitter at Will_Messenger. Follow me on Letterboxd at Will_Messenger. And follow me on TikTok at Dealmakers_CEO, where I occasionally make stupid videos. And also like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment and tell me what you thought of these movies. What some movies that you've seen in 2022 are that have really stuck out to you and you think that I should check out. So yeah, thanks for watching, and take care.